to order. This is the workshop to discuss the Restore Act multi-year implementation plan status and development. Cherie?
Okay, Commissioners, the purpose of this meeting is to follow up from the September 6th board meeting where we presented the framework and our schedule of how we were going to create the map, my app, get public input, solicit for public projects, etc. So today's workshop will go over the community needs assessment, proposed citizen projects, input received from the public meetings and comment period September 19th through October 6th, staff proposed MyApp projects, the draft MyApp without the projects, and decision points. Then we'll come back in January with a draft final MyApp, which will include the projects and the funding. So we, at the last meeting, we presented the draft community needs assessment, which was basically a footprint of needs and objectives around the county based on a tremendous amount of other state plans and local plans that had been approved, like the Water Management District swim plans, BMAP, strategic plans from Great Northwest Florida, our own department, I want to say Department of Commerce, but it's our own Chamber of Commerce and their EDC, the school board strategic plan and things like that. I think there were like 15 or 20 documents that we looked at. So that's in your package as well. We did not receive any input to that plan. Everybody seemed to feel that we had covered everything. So if you're good with it, I'm certainly good with it. So the
only input was just projects, not the plan itself.
Right. Then we asked for some citizen input. You know, do they have projects? And so what we've done here is we have a snapshot of each project. Is the next slide. My clicker.
Probably like us, he's already read the whole thing.
So anyway, the next few pages are just snapshots. We met with Stan Derplisky, I can't say his name, and he was okay with the project that we had for septic to sewer. He would just like to add an education component, but the recommendation is not to do it with this MyApp, but maybe seek the Department of Health to see if they could help pay for education of septic to sewer projects and different septic systems.
Does he think the education is needed to convince people to want to do it? Or, I mean, if we've got the money and we're going to implement it, would we need the education, or is there some other aspect of that?
Part of, I think, what he was referring to is in the BMAP projects, we talked about an education component that would give information on if somebody wanted to upgrade their septic system or connect the sewer after sewer had, you know, we had offered a connection, would be to educate them on financing, if they, and to go into the schools and educate, you know, from school, you know, what happens with, you know, with your sewer and what happens with, you know, how it gets into the water and how it impacts the economy and your health and everything else. So it's kind of like a health-wise, you know, in financing.
One of his points also is people that have septic tanks, you know, educate them, make sure they pump it every 5 years and whatever that cycle may be.
Right.
Every time it stops working, you got to have a pump. But the modern ones
stops working, you're missed it.
Well, the modern ones have effluent screens on them, and usually they clog up before anything fails. You just clean them out. Anyway, I digress because I have read the entire presentation.
I've replaced 2 pumps in mine in 15 years, so that's usually, I pump it at that time when I have to replace a new pump.
Okay. The next project was from Maureen Mitchell and the Panacea Waterfronts, Panacea Headboat Educational Eco Tours.
Headboat? Oh.
Pay by head,
like
per person.
A large charter boat that carries 30, 40, 50 people.
Charter boat would have been easy for me to understand.
But at the last...
Did you know what a headboat was?
Like the ones over in Panama City, like
Chuck, you know what a
Charge per
headboat?
head, so they call them headboats.
They must not have had those in Smith Creek.
A charter boat, usually the
Trust
party
me,
is all.
on Black River, they had no headboats up there.
Oh, I got you.
Charter the whole
Yeah,
boat.
the headboat, you say, I just want one seat. and you just
Oh, I
you
got you.
your
It's kinda like
spot.
they do in Panama City over there at that.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, we learned something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this boat, if this project was not included in our recommendations because it would be a purchase of a major capital outlay project for a private entity, and at the September 6th board meeting, the board approved to only spend the money for county-owned projects. And we were not going to sub-grant any dollars. The other project is St. Mark's sewer upgrade, and that's where they want to go from grinder pumps to a gravity. The next one is an oyster program, which is very similar to the project that we put in for the State Gulf Consortium, which is an oyster reef or oyster bed restoration. David and I met with Dana Peck and John Taylor a couple of weeks ago, who submitted this project, and they were in agreement and felt that it would be better if we would wait and meet in January with FWC and go over this project to find out how much FWC has already done, what kind of research they've already done, and what kind of research and information that they could do just because they're the state entity, and make sure that they're in agreement with this project. And that was okay at that time with Ms. Peck and Mr. Taylor, so after the first of the year we'll pull that meeting together.
The point in that is if unless FWC or DEP or some of these folks are not towing the same line and we're all not singing the same hymnal, there's no sense in doing anything.
Yeah, we're just fighting against them.
Yeah, you're fighting against them, and also we can implement all this stuff, and if they're not buying into it or gonna help with the program, we're taking money just chunking out there. Okay?
And in general, I think it's a good idea.
In general, it's a good idea, but we gotta have the state's cooperation.
The next project was St. Mark's Fishing Pier. They would like to build a fishing pier. I believe it's where the tugboats used to come in, beside Posey's, but they don't have anything permitted, not even sure that they would be able to drill pilings. The next project was St. Mark's again, ADA compliant kayak and canoe launch, and if you'll recall, this is one of the Triumph projects that were recommended a couple of weeks ago and submitted to the Triumph board as priority number 5, so hopefully they'll get funding for it from there.
Skip the boardwalk?
That was the ADA,
Yeah.
No, there's, the boardwalk's different.
right, the boardwalk,
Yeah, you hit the thing, not the boardwalk.
okay.
That's right, yeah, the boardwalk was,
Right.
they asked for that as well.
And so they have, St. Mark's had the boardwalk, the sewer to gravity, and the ADA compliant, and the fishing pier. So yeah, those were the only projects that we
That
received.
one's on there twice by the other dude and by Zoe, right?
Right,
Okay.
that's right, that's the reason that's on there twice.
Because it's twice as important.
That's right.
Right, so we knew it was the same project, but we didn't want to remove either one of them because they both submitted it. So if we got 3 of the same project, then we tried to put them in there. Input from public meetings and comments,
Nothing from South Chopper.
not yet. Comments received, we had 18 citizens provided comments, but they may have made a recommendation for a project, but they didn't submit the project form, so we didn't include it as a project because they didn't give us anything but a title. And so if you can see, it's anything from dredging and channel markers, observation tower near Panacea, community center pool, sewer for Amelia Woods subdivision. Somebody, the Wakulla Springs Alliance wanted extended time, and we said, no, you've had a lot of time for input into the Wakulla Springs project. Installation of barriers for private land, Pine Island, water quality study of Oyster Bay and Skipper Bay, sponsorship of an oyster relay one time, and minimize and eliminate development along Skipper Bay.
So the barrier on Pine Island, they were talking about vehicles out there.
Keep vehicles from going down there.
I mean, I didn't understand that, because, I mean, you gotta get to it by boat, right? I mean,
It's the same one I'm thinking of,
yeah,
yeah. Unless there's another one out there that somebody calls that.
I don't
Unless
know.
it's
I
the,
don't know either.
yeah.
I don't know.
We received, then we showed the public the Gulf Consortium project, state expenditure plan, and we asked for public input on to those projects. We didn't ask for them to rank them according to a numerical system. We just asked for them to rank them in priority order the way they would like to see them. And we got a lot of good support on those projects, but the recurring theme in every meeting was water quality, whether it was recreational fishing or swimming or drinking water or tourism. Water quality and good water was very important.
It just blows my mind about the coastal sewer as opposed by Jack and the Wakulla Springs Alliance. And I think the reasoning was that's gonna encourage development, so we're trying to,
You don't have that much.
trying to put money in the pockets of developers.
You just don't have that much more development, so you're right.
I just thought that was kind of funny.
On Masha Sands Park, I want to make a statement to make things clear. We had support for the beach renourishment, but we did have comments that opposed dredging sand flats on around Masha Sands to use for the sand. So I just want to make it clear. Everybody, they supported the beach renourishment, but just don't dredge the sand flats to get the sand.
Could we do that anyway? Because they wouldn't let us do that at Shell Point, right?
They wouldn't let us do it anyway.
No, they make us find sand and haul it in.
They got that big pile over there at summer camp still?
I don't know,
Got
but
a
that,
mountain of white sand over
but,
there.
we have to use, we can't even use stuff, we've asked that all over, and we can't use it for beach quality. If you have beach quality sand, all that stuff has to be hauled in from Mariana. Or
Who was it that called
as
us
soon
trying to,
as soon as there's supposed to be another pit's gonna open up with our Shell Point project.
somebody was trying to get the county to buy some sand from that big, there's the big hill where the old prehistoric coast used to be there.
I heard
Yeah.
they were getting sand from
Mostly all
Roberts.
sand.
Yeah, and some of that's going, there's some folks, our Shell Point thing is renourishment. We'll probably, in the future, piggyback on that. Whoever buy that, whose pit that comes from, buy some, put over there.
It's coming from Roberts, I believe.
Roberts, okay.
And as you can see, we got a lot of support for the other projects, and there, it all, you see that support for water quality and public access. And then the next slide just shows you how the SEP projects, the Gulf Consortium projects, we showed how the county ranked them based on the numerical scoring that we presented at the September 6th meeting. And then we did the public average, and you really couldn't draw any conclusion about, projects, nothing stood out as number one, number two. It was just the recurring theme of water quality and public access and things that would help with recreational and commercial fishing.
Tell how many people from Panacea were at the meeting to rank the projects, I guess.
There were like 30-something.
Sheree, Posey, and
That was probably the biggest attendance, wasn't it?
That was the biggest meeting.
Yeah.
Shell Point was pretty good. St. Mark's, I think it was mainly maybe like 12, and that included us and their council.
all I'm saying is that the citizens' public input average may be slightly skewed by the St. Mark's, the Panacea people in attendance, which is good for them. A lot of them showed up. But
They spoke out. They contributed. And like I say, we had this. We put it in the newspaper. There was a news article we had on our website. It was announced at board meetings, and we went on the road for 3 nights in a week, and continued to do outreach.
I noticed in Jack's comments, he was violently against ranking 1, 2, and 4 that the public input said was most important.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, that brings us to when staff looked at everything we received, we came up, we looked at some selection criteria. We went back to our ranking system, and we pulled out and recommended projects based on that scoring system. And the projects that we're recommending, we can complete them within 3 to 5 years. They're included in the community needs assessment. They're partially funded from other grants. They're ongoing. They're essential to water quality and marine life habitat. They're within county waters, and our county resources can support the expansion of these projects, because another thing you have to look at with these projects is, we may get a grant to fund it, but how does that impact the county's budget long term? First couple of years you usually don't have an impact because everything's brand new. But then after it's 3, 5, 10 years old, you're going to have to, put money out for repairs and, higher maintenance. So we look at that as well. So going on to the grand finale, which I know that's what this whole process has been about, is recommended projects. And we're also looking at just doing like a 3 or 5 year multi-year implementation plan, because for one thing, we have a limited amount of money. It's true we've got the $13 million, but it's over the next 15 years that we're going to get this money. So actually on deposit now is like $2.8 million. We get about another $800,000 next year, another $800,000 the following year, and so on. So the biggest challenge that David has, and Brandy and Greg, is managing this project with a cash flow. So we can't just put $15 million worth of projects and expect them to get funded the first year. They've got to be phased in and sequenced. And that's why David has this spreadsheet he pulls out. And when we get money in for a project, then we show it being funded, and then we may move it down. So if we do a 3 or 5 year MIAP, we can come back and update this depending on the amount of funding or lack of funding that we've received in the last 3 years. So it's a living document.
It seems like converting septic tanks to sewer exactly fits that. You can go do this one area in 1 year, like you could do Lake Ellen with 1 year of funding and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
And not have to have a huge project, you know what I mean?
And so we're laying this out just like any engineering or a project. It's like the first year may be for the feasibility, preliminary engineering, and then you've got, next year, the next 18 months, you come in with your construction after you've done your procurement and you know how much your construction's going to be.
Just like DOT's 5-year work plan sounds.
You got it. It's exactly. And that's this. This is our 5-year MIAP plan.
So as the next, just like DOT's 5-year plan, then it's a moving window. So next year you may have something new added on to year 5 that's not there today.
Exactly. And like I say, it's all because you know what you have today, but the next 12 to 18 months, your hope is that you continue to get money infused into the county, either through taxes, the 1 cent sales tax, on visitors coming and paying boat ramp fees, state grants, springs protection, and other miscellaneous grants that we go after. So as long as we can keep that infusion, this plan will be very dynamic. So the other thing is, like, as long as we stay consistent with this theme, the Treasury's a little bit more lenient on doing modifications that they don't consider substantial. If we go to substantial, it requires a major modification, which means I would have to bring you back for another workshop, okay, to go through it in another 45-day advertisement period. So considering the amount of money that we have and the urgency of some of these, this is why we are recommending these 2 projects that would include the activities that are under them. The first one is Wakulla Gardens, septic to sewer, water quality, spring shed protection. The activities would be connection fees for septic to sewer projects. And the reason why is some of our projects have come in, they're more than our estimates are, because we do our estimates 2 years in advance. We put the request in, and construction costs are either up or down. So sometimes we may need money for septic for the tap fees that the grant may not cover. So we're putting this in here to make sure we have funds to complete the project. You want to?
There. The connection fees for septic to sewer and the lift station, to upgrade the Jerry Moore lift station. Both of those we will use those moving into the future as grant match to our Northwest Florida Water Management dollars we'll get from Amendment 1 dollars. So that'll be, we've got a commitment of $4.2 million for the next 7 years each year. So those will be the connection fees for sewer to septic. We'll pull that out. Our plans are to pull that out of Restore Act, but also it'll be a grant match for $4.2 million, and we'll do that. And then the lift station, we're going to go for some grant dollars for lift station at US 98. But if we have to, we can use that as a match as well. So that's all. That's our plan. Is to, so you just imagine this is probably about, each one of those slugs is going to run about $900,000 for the connection fees. Be about, and the hookups. It's about $900,000 per project. 4.2 million. So you can see we're getting our 1 to 3. It's actually 1 to 4. So we're getting what we were looking for.
Jerry, you remember Miss Arts was adamant that no building be named after a living person. You remember that? We went through the thing. So I don't think it's fair if we call it Jerry Moore Lift Station. Some point in the future.
I'll shift that burden to Mike. He pushed me into this in 210.
It's stuck too.
Yep. Got an intersection.
Even the state knows about it.
They all know, oh, you're the Jerry Moore lift
Oh,
station.
Jerry Moore lift station. That's a famous lift station.
Right down in the intersection.
So anyway, and it actually, it is what it is.
Could I pass?
And so the next project would be artificial reefs, and although that ranked as number 9 when we did our ranking system, it ranked number 5 as citizens. And the other reason why we moved it up is because OR is now very active and engaged in our county, and they have been doing a lot of the work. They've just been doing it, the permitting, going out doing the dives, checking the surface, the water, sand, bottom, whatever it is. And so if they can continue to do things like that, then that allows us to use some of our money more for construction and to help them. But they're at the table now and very willing to work with us, as they weren't a couple of years ago.
St. Mark's is putting reefs in really quick. They're really, I think they've got 6th in this last year.
Yeah.
So.
And so these were going to be inshore reefs. They weren't going to be.
Yes.
Yeah, we weren't going to go outside the
10 mile.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And we were going to present a spreadsheet showing the funding, but we decided to wait until we got, your approval and what other projects, and then when we bring everything back in January, then we'll show a spreadsheet showing how the money lays out. The last thing is the draft My App without projects.
Oops, I'm sorry.
You got it?
I'm working.
And that's just because I wanted you to look at the projects and give direction on if these projects are okay or you want to add other projects. So when we come back in January, there will not be another workshop. It will just be an agenda item. It'll be the draft My App that you see in this package now, and the only thing I'm going to do is add in the project descriptions and the matrix and the funding and all the other attachments.
I forgot to mention when we met earlier today, it looks good. One little small typo that I found on page 10, at the very top sentence, says tourism positioning Wakulla County has a destination spot. I think, shouldn't it be is a destination spot?
Okay.
But that's the only thing I saw.
Or as.
Is or as, yeah.
I'll blame that on spell check.
Yeah. It's spelled correctly. Yeah.
So that's really, and like I say, we're meeting Treasury requirements to be transparent, community involvement, and keep everybody informed and make sure that decisions are made by the board in an environment where questions can be asked and citizen input. So the decision points and board direction to wrap this up is going to be approve the community needs assessment, approve the proposed recommended MIAP projects and ranking, approve the draft MIAP without projects, and any other direction.
Where is the draft MIAP without project? Is it in the slides?
That's the last,
No, it's just it's one of the documents
the last
that was
document
attached to the agenda item.
that starts.
That's the one that says draft all across every page.
Yeah.
That'd be it.
Starts at page 104.
I think another good analogy for this compared to the CRTPA is the CRTPA has a long-term transportation plan. It has hundreds of stuff in it, but they don't rank how it's going to be funded. The DOT 5-year work plan actually says how they're going to pay for it and when they're going to do it, but it has to be in this plan to get in that plan. So that's kind of how I'm going to look at it.
You're looking at it very good.
So this could, 2 or 3 years from now, we may have totally different
Sure.
projects, or we may say we're done with Wakulla Garden, now we're going to move on to Lake Helen, or we're going to move on to whatever,
Right.
Because I say, in the event the state gave us, $10 million for Wakulla Gardens, then, this may not be necessary, but that's why we're calling it a initial 3 to 5 year plan.
Will we be getting some money out of the Restore Act to do the engineering and so forth to set up
Engineering for,
these projects?
that, we've set it up to where the Gulf, I'm sorry, Jerry, Restore Act Pot 3 Gulf Consortium, that is what we're using for engineering, design, and all that stuff. So we're taking our Pot 3 dollars and using that for that, and then that's the front end, and we're using this on the tail end, and grant dollars in the middle.
This is the money that's just ours,
Just
right?
ours, that's right.
The consortium money belongs to a bunch of people.
That's right.
But we're going to try to use their money
For design.
to do our
That's
project.
one of the problems that we have as a small county. We're not like Leon and some of these bigger counties. We can go and pay for a bunch of engineering studies and master plans and stuff like that ahead of time. We're always having to get a grant to do that. So this will allow us to go after and go ahead and do the planning that needs to be. One of the biggest things we need is some master planning. We've got in our Gulf Consortium quite a bit of master planning as well as engineering, project engineering work.
At what point will Cherie be overloaded?
Oh, she'll never do
I'm overloaded every
it.
day.
Never. Why did you ask her that question?
Well, I know I know that she'll need some help on
Yeah,
this.
we have
We've got
divided up fairly well, so we got a good big team. Plus, she's got
Natalie.
superstar back here, Natalie. Natalie can do all this and balance a pie with one hand.
Natalie keeps me grounded. She's wonderful. But no, wait, before I wrote the grants, managed the grants, paid all the invoices, and did all the reimbursements. Well, now then, that's been separated out. So now then Brandy, and I did all procurement. So now then with Brandy coming on board with her budget background, so now then Brandy she manages all the grants. She pays all the invoices. She does all the reimbursements, all the grant management and the contract management. So that heavy workload is now Brandy's.
It's just
These two chase dollars now.
It's just important that you don't do small stuff when there's large stuff out there.
No, they're all big stuff. They're all big stuff.
So now that gives me more time. I had to pull this together, and with Natalie, just, to do all these public meetings, there was no way I could have managed grants and paid invoices. So it is balanced out.
Good deal. That end of the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any citizens who want to speak? Come on up. Make sure you fill out a speaker card with Patty.
Please state your name and address, please.
Walt Dixon, 12 Blue, Panacea, Florida, downtown. I'm right here representing Panacea Waterfront, and let's get the record straight. I don't know who gave y'all the information, but Panacea Waterfront is not against the Massive Sands Park. We have always been in favor of either dredging the channel in Panacea and and putting sand back at the park there to have a beach again for the people to use. And or if we got to go out there and dredge the sand up where it's been washed away and making those sandbars. We're all in favor of that, so we're not opposed to that. But it's another thing I would like to ask David Shree, one, on the Wakulla Gardens ground addition, are you using the money to pay for people's connection to the sewer?
That's right, as we get grant dollars for the construction of the sewer.
Why are you treating the people of Panacea different? When we had sewer initially, everybody had to pay a front foot assessment to hook up. Now, where you had a vacant lot or not, you had to, or a house, you had to pay.
Mm-hmm.
And these other projects, I think the people should have to do the same thing, so it'll be fair to everybody.
The part of the grant dollars we get from this, we have to tie the homes on, and then part of that DEP said we want those tap fees to either be waived by the county or paid by the grant, one or the other. So that people will actually tie on, just like this happened in Sop Choppy. Sop Choppy was the same way, but it used grant dollars, but that was a federal grant program, but it did the same thing.
I think Panacea was alone, wasn't it, Walt?
There's a big difference on the funding.
We had a
big difference on the funding.
Right, we had a loan and a grant from Farmers Home back in those days.
Right.
And a grant.
86, 87.
Right, and we had a loan, and to help make the loan feasible is everybody on Massey Sands Road in Panacea, if the sewer line ran by your property, where you had a house or not, you had to pay a front foot assessment.
Right.
So you had to have
I wish it'd been
revenue.
I wish it'd been like this back then, but it just wasn't. And right now, the grant, somebody asked me about Wakulla Gardens, the legislature appropriated the money to pay for everybody's hookup there. I wish back in '86,
Right.
somebody would have gave the county the money, so I knew exactly what you're saying. Frank
Right.
Evans, you just keep up with the front foot assessment in Panacea, so.
And you probably needed that revenue to qualify for the loan.
That's right, exactly.
That's what
And
happened.
Exactly.
unfortunately, that's just the way it was.
That's right. That's right.
But so far, we haven't had to use local dollars. It's all legislative
File for
appropriation.
reparations.
But we're still waiting for our check, though, for our BP money for Panacea, David. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
It's in
other,
the mail, Walt.
any other citizens? Anyone else?
Consultants,
Discussion from the board?
motion adjourned.
I got one thing I just want to run past you. I just wanted to kind of to be able to wrap my brain around how our projects compared to the ranking of the citizens. And I was surprised that they turned out pretty close. I mean, we've got it on the list, but for me, I need a picture to break it down. So what I did here, I've got the county ranking, and there's some extras if y'all need those. County ranking, citizens ranking, and then I did a combined ranking. I just added the scores together, and whatever's the lowest number to figure out what the ranking is. And then what I call the combined ranking, the top 6 projects, 5 of the county's top 6 projects remained in the top 6. They shuffled around a little bit, and 4 out of the citizens remained in the top 6. So you can see everything in green was the bottom 7, everything in yellow was the top 6. But I just thought it was kind of interesting. We take citizens' input, and I wanted to see how that kind of overlaid each other.
Well, again, remember, it was heavily weighted to Panacea's
It was.
perspective on it.
It was,
No offense to Panacea.
but it was open to the public, and
Yeah, that's right.
everyone was encouraged to attend. Yeah.
If you
So-
had held the beating in Wakulla Gardens, I
Yeah.
bet the #1 project would have been sewer in Wakulla Gardens.
So how important right now is the ranking? I know we won't do that now. We'll do it at the meeting tonight, but how important is that, and is that subject to change at some point in the future?
It's important that we show how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
It's important to show how we evolved and how we got to where we are. And we will show in the My app, this is the ranking that we received.
Yeah.
But that because the recurring theme based on the documentation is water quality. And everybody that submitted comments didn't rank, and everybody that submitted a project, so I don't have like the same group of people that did all 3, then I feel confident that we can justify showing that we're funding and recommending those top 6 programs.
All this stuff, the county records, is just background data, right? What we're going to put on tonight is sewer and reefs. and then, 2 years from now, there may be 2 different projects on there. And then we'll look at it's kind of like the road payment metric. It's just
If
because
you-
it's there, doesn't mean you're going to go to number 1 and proceed down in line. And
Now, and also, one of the key things to keep in mind here is realize these suite of projects that you've got here, they're in every pot that we're playing in.
Right.
So just like the Bayside Marina, like it's ranked up here at the top, that's the top one on Gulf Consortium.
Right.
Right out of the chute. It's one of the top ones. So that's where it's kind of tough. You know what I mean? Because you're not. The big picture is we got all these in different pots, and we're putting all of them. We're throwing all the spaghetti against all 3 pots.
we might want to change that to Bayside boat ramp.
Bayside
Old
boat
ramp.
ramp, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see basically this first group that we had is pretty much obvious, a desperate need more or less.
Mhm.
As we get on down to other projects, there'll be a greater fluctuation.
That's right.
And,
That's right. And there's nothing wrong if we, and for this pot 1, if you guys want to, we can shove Bayside Marina up there at the top, but it's also in our Gulf Consortium, but there's
Right.
nothing wrong with having both.
But we are going to rank the 13 projects tonight, right? That's it.
No,
oh,
Just the
We
2.
did that with the ranking last time. We did that with the ranking the last time.
Okay.
If you want to re-rank them, you can, but we can
Okay,
just move forward.
Okay. I thought that was part of the agenda
We're
item
not-
for tonight.
adopting the ranking, we're just adopting, based on the ranking, we're going to approve these 2 projects. And that's it. The ranking still stays the same. A year from now, we might come pick another one off here, and that'll be what we want funded.
Right, because the recommended projects, or the 2 projects and those activities were based on the ranking that we did with our scoring for the SAP projects. It was based on public input, public comments, and other documents in the community needs assessment.
And ones that would best fit the criteria established by the legislature, which I think the sewer fits
If
all of
it's,
them.
and in fact, Treasury, most everybody, a majority of the projects from all 23 counties are going under that very same thing, infrastructure. Because if you put things under, like, we're going to protect the sturgeons, then we have to show best available science. We'd have to come in and prove it's a sturgeon spawning ground, and then we'd have to, so there's lots of scientific data.
I think a good analogy would be like our CDBG money we get every year. Everybody always bellyaches, why don't you use it for this, or why don't you use it for that? But if you use it for home rehab or down payment assistance, it's determined to be an eligible expense, and you don't have to prove anything. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So infrastructure basically falls under that category. You could use it for something else.
Right, as
Yes.
long as it's county infrastructure, and it has an impact, and it's good for the environment at the same time, but we don't have to use best available science. So that's not another area that we have to go and expend resources to have a scientist or a biologist develop that criteria for us. And our outputs and outcomes are a lot more simple.
So as we progress on, are we going to have problems with the same thing that Walt brought up? Is that as we move into other areas, we have people expecting us always to pay for their connections?
Grant, it would pay for it, yes.
Well, we're gonna, as long as we're getting those dollars free for the construction, the expectation is we either waive them or we use other funding to pay those.
Now, when we did the sewer in Hudson Park over there, that was from a storm, I think, several years ago.
Mhm.
Or maybe it was CDBG, because I think the low to moderate incomes had their connection fee paid for, but everybody else had to pay out of their pocket, if I remember correctly.
May have been, I don't know.
Huh?
It's
That's-
different funding cycles, different,
That was because it was a CDBG project. It paid for low to moderate income.
right.
Tennessee, I think, was just a straight up loan, so they had to have that revenue.
And
stayed
the
off.
the whole intent of this funding is within, the idea of this funding is to take septic systems, the whole purpose is to take septic systems and put them onto sewer.
Out of the spring.
And they fit out of the spring station, so therefore the DEP and the water management, there's like, if you don't, most people don't have $5,000 to $6,000 to pay those costs, so therefore the line would sit there idle, still everybody using the septic system, then they've wasted a whole bunch of money. So that's the reason
That's
they're,
the change.
they're asking.
It's-
That's your challenge.
It's for springs protection, so they're gonna go ahead and pony up the money to go ahead and
That's
pay
right.
all costs to hook it on at no charge, that way they know they're gonna hook on.
That's right.
Yeah, but now anytime we have a connection, say we buy, we take over the wastewater treatment at Shell Point from Talquin. There's people in there that didn't connect. Are we going to have to pay for those connections?
That'll be up to the time that we go in there. If it's like on people on our normal system, like folks at the farm and other places, they pay per connection. Every time they get ready to tie on, and anybody in Wakulla Gardens and Magnolia Gardens that has an empty lot, they're gonna pay $38.50. They're gonna pay our access charge. So,
I think typically when the sewer has been expanded by the county.
That's right.
The county's allowed them to hook on for free. Now, they have to pay to dig the hole, to actually physically abandon the septic tank, which the grant in Wakulla Gardens actually paying for that also. But typically, we've have expanded the sewer, I think when it came into Crawfordville, right, with that all commercial businesses got to hook on, no tap fee. They had to, no access charge. They had to pay to physically get the line hooked up, but they didn't have to pay an access charge.
There's a period of time that you got on, during that period of time, it was free, after that you had to pay.
Okay.
but the key is we just gotta make sure that somebody pays the access fee. So that we make sure we're not in debt when we got to build our new wastewater treatment plant and pay for our, biggest thing is have our one that we're operating in paid for by the time we get ready to borrow for the next one.
We're getting grants to pay for a lot of our wastewater treatment plant costs. The plant.
Yeah, in fact, we're in a better position today than we've ever been in our sewer fund. And my projections are based on models I've been running, our third train we'll be in really good shape financially, from a financial situation, and we'll be able to have a lot more flexibility. We'll be in a very, very good, strong financial position, our wastewater, which is unusual.
How do you figure, let's just say the artificial reefs, how do you determine how much money that we'll be putting into that? How do you determine, let's say artificial reefs, how do you determine how much money we will need to put into that? You could say, well, we want 4 reefs or we want 20 reefs, and you will know pretty much what each reef may cost you, but how do you determine how many you need?
That is where we've asked,
Like, I would like to have 100, so you might want to have 10, so.
It's all according to where they can be permitted.
That's why, or what they do, right now they're doing that for free. They go out and they look at the sites that were previously permitted.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at that bottom to make sure that it's still a permittable spot. And if it is, they're recommending those first because it's easier to get permits for those. You won't know the amount of construction until you get your permit.
I understand that, but it's sort of up in the air because it's a big area. There's a lot of spots available. So how do we determine how many spots that we might provide for?
That's
just-
literally like surveying our coastline, and if there are grass beds, then we know we can't do anything. But
It's going to basically be the appetite for spending, right? Because we could spend all this money on reefs if that's what we wanted to do, but,
That's what I was asking. How do
Yeah.
we determine how much we want to spend?
right.
We're dedicating $125,000. I believe it's 2019, 2020 towards that, but that was just a
Right.
start. But it may be $10,000, it may be $1 million, I don't know.
More is better, but you have to have the right landscape.
That's right.
I would
So, wait, I
probably,
want to get back to this lift station thing, because I'm concerned about the BMAP program as it goes forward. Are we going to have any issues about slowing development, or should we be focused on getting development in areas where we can get sewer to them? I mean, it cost us $22,000 per sewer connection when we have to go in and, that's the average cost of coming back and adding sewer system to a development. It costs the county or the state $22,000. Are we focused on trying to get development into the areas where we already have sewer availability?
I would think we're not focused on trying to do that. What my hope is that us having sewer infrastructure in that area will lend itself for developers to come and tie into it and make it accessible for them.
It may not be, Chuck, but our code is. Just
Right.
because inherently you can only do certain things if you're on central sewer. So pretty much everything we've had that's not on a larger lot, like 2 acres, has had to build the sewer infrastructure at no cost to us. The farm, for example, or Saraland Phase 2 recently got built. He had to go build all the sewer infrastructure, donate it
Right.
to the county. So
Right.
the code encourages people to go into areas that have sewer or build the sewer for the county. So
If they want more density.
If they want more density, I
if
mean,
they want to do
it
2 acre lots or 5
yeah,
acre
it kills
lots.
me to see all these 5 acre lot subdivisions. Just
Well, some
kills
people
me.
want
'Cause
5
you
acres.
could go a 2 acre lot and sell it for the same amount of money if you just put a little infrastructure in.
And, you know, recently, well, not recently, several years ago, you could build a 5 acre lot subdivision on a dirt road, but you can't even do that anymore.
Well, I'm
That's
just
the
concerned that
developer.
we're not making sure that's taking place.
Well, the rules themselves, the springs protection thing for the performance-based septic tanks, that
The
discourages.
springs protection area, that's true. We have the same rules, we don't have the same septic tank rules outside the springs protection area.
But
So,
again, if they're gonna build a subdivision, they want the house to actually sell at a good, what market rate is, they're gonna have central sewer.
Mhm. Yep.
Any more input from the public? Comments, questions? Further
Sure,
discussion
John.
from the board?
So you're here an hour, 15 minutes.
All right. Stand adjourned. Thank you for coming out.
Sit here for a minute.